Welcome back to the show, and let's get to it, man. I know you said in your email yesterday that you had two stories to share today. Did you want to start there? Or did you want to weigh in on what I was talking about off air with the whole Chinese pneumonia possible link up with Christmas deflation or holiday season deflation, which could throw us into a major situation in the early part of 2024 or somewhere in 2024? Wherever you want to start today.
Well, I think, thanks for having me back on. Yeah, always a pleasure to be here. You know that. And,
Anything.
let's get into the stories because, look, we already know what they're going to do with this Chinese pneumonia thing. We predicted it already 2 years ago. I came out with a video about 2 months ago called Democide 2.0 or Don't Get in the Van, in which I predicted that this was going to happen all over again, the same thing that they did in 2020. They're just going to, rinse, wash, and repeat. And again, the whole point of it is to absolutely devastate the economy. Like, what they did in 2020, we're not going to recover from in our lifetimes. The number of businesses that went under and
Yeah.
the number of people that lost their life savings. And to lose a business is really tough. I mean, you got to remember that this is a mom and pop. They made huge sacrifices to start a business and run
Yes.
it. They put in 80 hours a week and they invested all their time and money. And now it's gone. It's all gone. They
Yep.
got nothing left to leave their children. They got nothing for a retirement. They've lost everything. It's absolutely devastating. It's inhumane. And they all did that on purpose. They knew when they were going to lock things down that that's what was going to happen. All the mom and pop businesses had to shut down. Walmart stayed open. So
Right.
don't, yeah. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
so they're going to do it again because what? There is still a faint heartbeat left in America.
Right. Yep.
you
No,
know,
it's true.
there,
Yeah, I was on the local news here, Stefan. There was a few more restaurants that have been around in the Ohio Valley for like decades and decades. Like the good old school mom and pop like diners. I think one of them was a diner, and it just recently closed down. And they're just closing down left and right
yep,
in our area, because, like you said. And that's one thing I always tell people, like as a businessman. Like I've been telling my folks, Stefan, like moving ahead with the cultural Marxism and everything we know they're going to do against us, like you got to have a skill trade. You got to be able to work with your hands and kind of do that stuff and keep it in your court. But in terms of like actually buying a building or buying space and having inventory and all that stuff, we know they're going to lock us down. That's you just it's automatic bankruptcy right there. Like
automatic.
don't do it. Don't put up a restaurant. Don't start a bookstore or any of that stuff. Like forget about it. No brick and mortar stores.
No, retail is dead, especially mom and pop retail. When all the little convenience stores went under, the ones that were run by the Koreans, and when they went under, then it's really bad because the Koreans work their asses off, and they got like 20 members of the extended family that all chip in to do shifts and things like that, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And if they can't keep it afloat, no. So they're going to do it all again. Jesus, Murphy, I don't know. I am so angry these days, Eric. I'm always angry. I really wish, I could focus my anger on certain targets so I could just go and punch it in the nose or snap their neck from behind, which is my favorite tactic. But, yeah, so they're going to do it again, folks. Get ready. It's nothing new. And, of course, as in previous incarnations of this scam, it'll all be based on nothing, falsehoods, lies. But again, 80% of the population, they're morons. They'll go along with it. And the 20% of us that say, well, but, we're cutting our own throats here. Oh, no, you must obey the government. Anyways, we know how this is going, Eric.
And one of the points I failed to make on the show yesterday with them specifically targeting kids, and I would have to go back and do a little bit more research on this, Stefan. But as you know, during COVID, we were really kind of just focusing in on the adult numbers. Not that the kids were undermined in that situation, but I think they're just really targeting the kids now with the vaccines and vaccines that they're pumping out, which are not even tested and tried. I know I had Father Paul Kramer on the show the other day, and he said it was either in Netherlands or Belgium where they were just throwing out experimental vaccines on the kids that weren't even tested for this pneumonia or whatnot. So that's one of the main reasons. Yeah, start getting the kids now.
Well,
getting the kids involved.
I took science in college. I took chemistry and biology, and I can tell you, none of these I can't say that word. None of these experimental injections have been properly tested. Anyways, people don't understand what it takes to test this stuff. First of all, you need a large selection of people. You need like 1,000, 2,000, 5,000 people to take this, and then you need a control group, and then you need to study the effects over 10 years. You think they did all that and approved these experimental, we have to come up with a word, Kool-Aid, whatever. God damn it, I'm sorry, you can't even speak about it. You can't even speak the truth anymore. You can't even hint at the truth because they'll come after you. So, it's ridiculous. But anyways, no, none of these things have been tested. They haven't been tested. Have they been tested on pregnant women? You would need 1,000 pregnant women all to take this medicine, and then you would need another 1,000 women to be the control group, and then you would need to study the effects of the women and their children, their offspring, and you need to study them and monitor them for 10 years to find out what the hell this stuff really does. You think that's ever happened? It's never happened. We know that the big pharmaceutical companies, they own the peer-reviewed magazines. That's another big myth. Peer-reviewed. It came out a couple of months ago. Somebody did a expose on the peer-reviewed magazines where they went in there and they checked all the the peer reviews, and it turns out like 49% was just pure bullshit. They didn't review nothing. So, it's the pharmaceutical companies that own the research companies that do the lab tests or the long-term tests, and that publish the peer-reviewed magazines, and it turns out they own it all. They tell them what to say. There's not a word of truth in any of it. So do I trust any of these things? Never. Don't do it, folks. They're going to come back with this. Mm-hmm. But listen, you're listening to Eric and me, so you're not stupid enough to go line up. I already know that, so sorry for insulting your intelligence there.
Right. Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. It's very frustrating. They think they're the bullies on the block, and the bullies are going to find out that there's going to be resistance. That's for sure. Now, let's get to these two stories. Which one do you want to relay first? I think you had several today.
Okay, so the first story takes place in Taiwan, and it's a true story. And I have to say that I have a bit of a criminal background. I was an OG, which is original gangster, in Toronto's most notorious ghetto. Believe it or not. No, I was in a street gang since I was like 13. And then later on because I was in the street gang, they hired me to work as a detached street worker. It was wonderful. Anyway, so I'm an OG. I've got a bit of a criminal history. I've probably committed upwards of 10,000 crimes. But I've only ever served one day. No, really, because, look, I smoked pot all through high school, okay? So I smoked pot every day for like 30 years. Is that 10,000?
It's legal, right?
And that was when it was illegal, yeah. And I was also a pot dealer. I sold pot for about 6 months. It helped fund my road trip to California. And so, yeah, I probably committed 10,000 crimes. And I've only served one day in jail, and that was for parking tickets.
Parking tickets.
They picked me up,
Oh, boy.
drove me to jail. You owe $500 in parking tickets. Can you pay? I said, hell no. But anyways, it's a whole different story because back in those days, if you serve one day in jail, so they pick you up at 6 o'clock at night and let you go to 6 o'clock the next morning, then all those tickets are done because they all say $20 or one day in jail. But when you serve one day in jail, it's concurrently for all the tickets. So this is a trick I learned from the truck drivers. They would say the same thing. They'd park wherever the hell they want. They don't care. And they say, just let them add up. And then after a couple of years, when you've got like $1,000, $2,000 worth of traffic tickets or parking tickets, just spend the night in jail and it's all wiped clean. They don't do that anymore. They caught on to that trick. Now what they do is they suspend your license and they suspend your firearms license. And so, no, you got to pay your parking tickets now. But anyways, but it's a good thing, and I tell people this, it's a good thing to be a little bit shady. Because of my experience as a street gang and as a pot dealer, I know things. I'm more street smart. And in the times that we are facing now, it's really important to be street smart. You can't be naive, people. You got to know what things are like on the streets because you're going to be dealing with it, whether you want to or not. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to tell you this story, and then I'm going to tie it into why you would need to know the lessons from this story right now, because there are tactics and strategies that you will probably need to employ, if not today, then in a couple of months. So when I was in Taipei, I was working, I would occasionally hire myself out as a minder. Now, a minder is a British term. It basically means like a bodyguard. But, I did close quarter protection and all that when I was into martial arts. But from time to time, people in Taipei, if they were going somewhere that they felt uncomfortable about going, or if they were carrying money, because in those days, this was before the internet and before cell phones, people paid with cash. And sometimes they walked around with like $15,000 in cash. And so they would kind of hire me to accompany them because everybody knew I was a martial artist there, and I'm 6'1" and a black belt, and so they would feel more comfortable if I went with them, right? So one of the people that I provided minder services to was a Filipino pot dealer, Edgar. Now, Edgar's mother was the mistress, or in China they call them Xiao Tai Tai, was the mistress of a Taiwanese diplomat to the Philippines. And because she was his mistress, her and her whole family got diplomatic immunity. And so when Edgar traveled to the Philippines, when he came back, his luggage was considered to be part of the diplomatic pouch. Now, the term diplomatic pouch it's an old sort of term when diplomats actually only carried a pouch that might contain, secret papers. But now, or for the last 50 years, diplomatic pouch means general immunity from search for any of your luggage. So if you have diplomatic immunity and you go to another country, the customs cannot search your luggage. You could have 20 suitcases. They're not allowed to look inside them because it's covered under the diplomatic pouch. So what Edgar would do is he would go to the Philippines. He'd buy a couple of pounds of hashish for, really cheap. He'd bring it back to Taiwan, and they couldn't stop him. They couldn't search his bags because, again, he had diplomatic immunity because his mother was the mistress of a Chinese diplomat. So Edgar made a pretty good living for himself. There wasn't a big drug trade there in Taiwan at the time. mostly just the expats, the Americans that were living there, and assorted other foreigners, and a few entertainers. Some of the movie stars, some of the singers, they would smoke pot or smoke hash. That's what Edgar dealt in. So Edgar kept me in hash the whole 4 years I was there. I never paid a dime for any of it. And the reason I didn't pay a dime and he kept me in hash was because I would offer my bodyguard services to him. Now, what I would do is set up what in spycraft is called a check route. A check route is whereby you think you're being followed. And again, this is old school spycraft, but it still applies to this day. You just have to adapt it a little bit. But in the old days, this is what you would do. You would say, okay, Agent A is going to go to a secret meeting at location X, and we want to make sure he's not being followed. So you plan out the route that Agent A is going to take from their house to the meeting location, and you station your own people along that route in secret, in incognito. Again, we were going to talk about this later, hiding in plain sight. So what would happen is that the agent would walk down the street, and it would be all written up. It'd be, you're going to walk down this street, and then you're going to stop in front of the bookstore and look through the window, and then you're going to walk across the street, and then you're going to go into the coffee shop and get a coffee, and then you're going to go down the street. Now, by the bookstore, by the coffee store, along the route, you have your people placed. And so if you see that they are being followed, there is a secret signal that you send to the person that's being followed that tells them, meeting canceled, you're being followed, go to the alternative location. So you set up an alternative location that's nowhere near the meeting place. And the signal that you're being followed might be something like one of your agents is standing out in front of the coffee shop. He sees the person coming in. He knows he's being followed, so he lights a cigarette. And the cigarette is the signal that you have been compromised. Your cover has been blown. Do not go to the secret meeting location. Instead, break off, and we'll see you tomorrow at the alternative location. Does that make sense?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, so this is old school spycraft, right? But this is something I employed when I would work with Edgar. There was another guy in Taipei. He was a Chinese, overseas Chinese. His name was Caesar, and he also dealt hashish. Mind you, he bought it from Edgar and then tripled the price and sold it to everybody else. But anyways, this guy was a paranoid freak. I'm telling you, I went once to buy something from him, some hash from him, and he owned a nightclub because his parents were rich overseas Chinese, and they bought Junior a nightclub to keep him busy. This guy lived in a pigeon coop on the roof of the building, in a pigeon coop. He was so paranoid. Anyways, so Edgar gives me a phone call. He says, listen, Caesar wants to buy a whole shitload of hash. He says, I don't trust it because he doesn't usually buy that big an amount. So I'm a little bit worried about meeting him. I said, no problem. Tell him to meet you at the Shaolin pub, which was one of the popular pubs that we all frequented at that time. It was located in Shuangchengjie, which is the old Vietnam War era red light district. Still a lot of girly bars and stuff like that around there. But anyways, so get him to meet you at the Shaolin pub. And what Edgar would do is he would never carry the hashish on him when he met a customer. He would go down one of the back alleys and stash the hash in a piece of paper underneath one of the dumpsters, right? So nobody would ever find it. And that way he's not ever carrying it on him. Okay, so I told him, I said, what time's the meeting? He says, well, 8 o'clock. I said, okay, good. I get at the Shaolin pub at 7 o'clock, right? And I walk in there, and people don't know that I have a connection with Edgar, so, that's fine, which is good. But you gotta keep things undercover all the time, and more so these days, Eric, than ever, You can't let everybody know who your friends are, especially if you have friends that are up to shady things like doing a Catholic podcast. Don't tell anybody people like that, okay?
All right.
Because you'll have the secret police on your ass in no time.
Yeah.
So,
the FBI has been hanging out in traditional chapels trying to figure out who's who lately. So, yep. Mm-hmm.
Oh, absolutely. Of course they are. Of course they are. That's what I mean, folks. Street smart. Come on. You got to know this already, okay? Please. So, so I went there 7 o'clock. I'm hanging out at the bar. I take a stool at the bar, and I turn around. So when I go into a bar, I always have my back to the wall, and I always face the entrance. Force of habit, folks. Nobody's going to come up behind me and hit me over the head with a beer bottle while I'm sitting at a table. Not going to happen. And I've seen that happen. So I always sit facing the door. And a little piece of advice for everybody, right?
Yeah.
So I get in there, and I'm looking over the whole club, see who's in there. I hang out there a lot, so I know people that, the regulars, I know everybody there. So about half an hour before the meeting time, two men come into the bar. And, my alarm bells went off right away. They were undercover cops. It's so obvious. The shoes, the suits, the way they walk, the way they were scanning the bar. They were really looking around, scanning. They're looking for Edgar, I already know. And they probably have a photograph of him. So we figured it out. Caesar was setting Edgar up. Caesar probably got busted. And he probably made a deal with the local police saying, well, I can give you my supplier. Okay, well, let's set him up and we'll arrest him and we'll go easy on you. Happens all the time, right?
Oh, for sure.
All the time, some guy gets busted and he's going to turn in all his buddies for a plea deal. It happens all the time. And when Caesar put in this order for a whole shitload of hashish, Edgar got suspicious, and that's why he had me go there. So I see the undercover cops. I know what they're there for. Days later, the waitress would come up to me and say, hey, where's your friend Edgar? I said, why, you ask? Oh, the police are here looking for him every night. So anyway, so I see him come in, and now it's about half an hour before the rendezvous time. So I leave the bar. I go downstairs. I stand on the corner, and I wait for Edgar to pull up on his scooter, because I know where he parks. He parks down the alley. That's where I always park too. So he pulls up. He looks at me. I turn away and walk down the street. That's the signal, right? So remember, at this time in Taiwan was still under martial law. Taiwan has the Guinness Book of World Records for being the country that's been under martial law for the longest time, 40 years. So, I mean...
I didn't know that.
Wow. Oh, yeah, and...
I knew it was long. I didn't realize it was that long.
Yeah, it was that long, and I mean... Technically, everything was forbidden. Dancing was forbidden. Live music was forbidden. Meeting with more than 3 people was forbidden. Nobody obeyed any of those rules. This is China. But on the books, all of this was forbidden. So, undercover police, holy shit. They got that place sewn up. It's the little granny selling fish balls from the food cart down the street. It's the newspaper dealer with the amputated legs sitting on the corner. I mean, they're all in on it. They're all secret police.
Wow.
I'm not kidding. I've seen it happen. Like they jump into action when they catch somebody, and then you realize, holy Jesus, everybody on this street is secret police.
Even the amputee guy trying to chase after you on one leg?
No. He points and yells. That's the guy,
I'm visualizing him trying to run after you.
Yeah, no, but no, I'm not kidding though. Like, so, yeah, it can be hairy. So you got to be on your game, right? So I'm on my game. So even if we are being watched, if I was being watched, nobody could connect me to Edgar. Because what did I do? I didn't talk to him. I didn't wave to him. I didn't nothing. I didn't do anything. As soon as I saw him, I walked down the street, and so that was his signal to go to our rendezvous location, which was the Plowman's Pub in Dinghow, which was on the other side of town. So a couple of hours later, I'd meet him there. And he'd say, "That goddamn Caesar, he set me up." I said, "Yeah, he did." No, so how does that help us today? How this helps us today, first of all, Trudeau was caught there. Where was he? He was in India. And they didn't want to let him go. He was a couple of days late. And then the rumor came out that was because they found drugs on his private jet. And since he was causing some trouble for the Indian government there, because he was mouthing off some politically correct bullshit, they detained him and they searched his plane. And then it was all covered up. But look, all these politicians, all these diplomats, remember, they can bring tons of luggage into the country. Nobody's allowed to search them. So you don't think that every time Bill Clinton gets on the plane, there isn't 5 kilos in his suitcase. Come on. It's just a little bit extra cash on the side. They all do that. They all do that. You have no idea how much contraband and drugs and weapons are smuggled in and out of countries by your own politicians. But how does that apply today? Well, it applies today because we are facing such a crime wave, and we see all these follow home crimes, right? You go to the grocery store, you go to the bank, you go to the Walmart, you make a big purchase. There's people there watching you, right? And they're going to follow you home. And you need a check route. Same thing like the spies do. You need to be able to figure out if people are following you home. So if not today, depends on where you live. If you live in San Francisco or Seattle or Los Angeles, and you go shop at Macy's or Louis Vuitton, there's people there waiting, watching you. They're going to follow you home. They're going to hijack you just as you're opening the door to your house. So what you need then is
think about this.
Yeah.
I was going to say, think about this too, Stefan. During the first round of COVID, they started rolling out the old Nazi 1-800, not vaccinated program, or if you see anything suspicious activity, maybe some person get caught on a red flag law. You know what I mean? Like that person might have a gun and he's too crazy or something like that. I mean, yeah, that's why you gotta be very careful. Like even in the neighborhood or the development that I'm in, not on my street, but like in other streets where the family houses or whatnot. Like I know of like outright socialists. Like I don't even talk to them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I don't try to interact. You know what I mean? Like because the more you talk, they're probably trying to feel you out, kind of thing. And so, yeah, I don't. Like you said, you got to be careful of your surroundings and who you're talking to and all that stuff. But and then I'll pick back up here, Stefan. But again, like after this collapse happens, and every day is Black Friday. That was like my point of my article. At a certain point in time, every day is going to be like Black Friday.
Yes.
Where it's going to be pure pandemonium in the stores. Whatever's in the stores, people are going to fight over. And then if you're lucky enough to leave the store with something, this is where it gets into what Stefan's talking about today. Like you better have a safe route home. You better know how to get home the quickest, most efficient way without being blown up by the local COVID mob.
Yeah, they even do hijackings on the road. I saw a couple of videos. They pull in front of the driver. 3 guys get out of the back with guns, right on the main street. You're trying to pull into a highway on-ramp, and the guy pulls up in front of you, stops his car. 3 guys come out with guns. They pull you out of your car. They steal everything you got. It takes like 10 seconds for them to rob you blind. So one of the precautionary techniques that I would recommend depends again on your neighborhood and what the situation is like. Maybe you don't need to do it today, but probably within the next couple of months, you're going to need to do something like that, is you have somebody like me follow you. So if you're going to go to the grocery store, if you're going to send your wife to the grocery store, your best bet is to follow her in your own car. Now, when they go into the grocery store, you park and you sit in your car and you park very close to where your wife parked so you can see the car and you can see the entrance to the grocery store so you can see when she comes out because they usually don't hit people while they're actually in the store. But once you're out, it's what they call a transitional space. Going from the front door of Walmart to your car door, you're out in the open and you're vulnerable. So if I'm sitting there and I'm watching, and then I see the wife come out the door. Now, if I see a couple of guys that were kind of loitering near the front door suddenly turn around and follow her, okay, now I know. Now, if they should try to hijack your wife, right, they will not be expecting me to come up behind them, right? So that's the advantage. Like, I will attack them from behind, and it will come as a complete shock to them. And the element of surprise, and, well, because of my martial arts skills, I'll probably be carrying a cane, or I might even be carrying something else. I come up behind them. I've caught them by surprise. If they get in the car and they follow your wife home, I'm going to be following them. When she pulls up into the driveway and they pull up into the driveway, I'm behind them again. So this is a strategy that, even though it's really old school James Bond stuff,
Right. Sure.
but it's something you might need to do today. That's just the way things are.
Yeah. Now, did you have a cool nickname? You're telling us your John Wick or Equalizer stories. Not sure if you've seen any of those movies.
Oh yeah, great movies. Yeah.
My dad. Yeah. I actually want to see the latest Equalizer. The last John Wick, my dad watched recently. I didn't get a chance to check that one out. But what did you have a cool nickname on the streets?
Yeah. My nickname was the Smack.
The Smack. I love it. So the Smack's going to be back in service soon. Once everything breaks down, you can hire the Smack. You have to make the websites, thesmack.com.
Yeah, that might be an idea. Yeah. We're talking about my Equalizer days. Look, I didn't get into a whole lot of shit like that. Look, it's just brain work, right? You spot the problem, you avoid the problem. It was a couple of times I would follow Edgar, and there was some triad guys around, and I would give Edgar the signal not to go pick up his pot in the garbage can, but to move on because some triads were following him. Things like that. I never got into a fight with the triads or anybody else. I never had to use my martial arts skills because you got to be. See, I've always taught my students, if you are standing in an alley fighting people, you've already made 3 big mistakes.
Right.
You didn't spot the trouble. You didn't evade this trouble. You didn't avoid the trouble. This is a last resort, is to stand your ground and fight. But instead, you figured this out. We know the code signals. That's the other thing. Have a code signal. What is the code for you're being followed, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's why I mentioned to you, I think it was on the last show, or maybe the show before that I've recently started reading a lot of books on guerrilla warfare. And that's like one of the main things that I learned is it's all about avoiding the fight. You know what I mean? And like you said, the element of surprise.
Yeah.
And it's very interesting, the different tactics. I told you last time I was reading that book on Che, or Chi, however you say it.
Mm-hmm.
I forget how you exactly pronounce it, but I mean, bloody brilliant. I mean, bloody brilliant tactics, man. I liked how they thought, and this is the whole thing. Like, not only is Canada communist, obviously, but our country becomes more communist, and soon they're gonna roll out the police state, and it's going to go live. And and this is why I've said from day one that we, in small packs of resistance, we're going to have to try to survive the Antichrist Hunger Games. So,
Yep.
some level it's kind of like Red Dawnish a little bit, or the
Yes.
Antichrist, or the Hunger Games itself. And you better
Yeah.
have a strong community. Like Stefan has been preaching since day one. and you better be you better be ready to go once this rolls out. Because if you're not, it's going to be too late. You can't try to organize this as. I mean, it'll be. Well, I don't know. Maybe you could speak to that because you got the experience. I don't, but it seems to me it would be pretty difficult if they're already out on the streets trying to put something together.
Yeah, it would be difficult. Absolutely. That's why I've been screaming from the rooftops, organize now, while we still have a chance.
Right. Yeah.
So, yeah, those are
Yeah.
tactics that, listen, think about it. The thing with strategies and tactics is to be able to apply them to different scenarios. It requires a bit of intelligence, a little bit of creativity, but you can apply it to different scenarios and it will work. And as I've said many times before, the number one survival skill you need is cunning. You
Yeah.
could take, like I told you about the SAS training methods that the British used, and how they would, get them to jump out of an airplane with a parachute, middle of the night, somewhere over Europe, with nothing, no money, no identification, no weapons, nothing, and they had 3 days to get back to England. They didn't know where they were. Could have been Poland, could have been Germany, and they have to improvise and get back to home base, which means stealing identity papers, robbing people for money, and getting.
Jason Bourne stuff.
It's Jason Bourne stuff. And that's the way they used to train. And listen, all those guys were breaking every law in the book. And that's why I say it's helpful if you have a bit of a criminal background. Because, we're dealing with criminals. You got to know what they're doing. And
Yeah.
you fight fire with fire. They're criminals. So
Yeah,
I'm going to
the
be a bit
criminals
of a
are
criminal too,
Yeah.
in order to survive. And that's where being cunning comes in. You can have all the supplies, you can have a bunker, you can have machine guns and all that. But if you're an idiot, you're going to lose it all.
Right. Right. Yeah. No,
So
I agree.
you
I
got to
agree,
be
man.
smart and
Yeah.
cunning.
Yeah. Oh man, fascinating talk. We headed back into Stefan's John Wick days. Very fascinating conversation. So we appreciate those stories. And before we let you go, let's do a little shameless self promotion. What can we help you promote this month, Stefan?
Well, the same thing that I always promote. Please get my survival library. It includes the book Mastering the Secret Art. And it's a book that I republished. I cleaned it all up. I edited it. I made it a nice layout and a nice cover for it. But it was originally a pamphlet produced by the Communist Party of South Africa. That's where the Czech root comes from. It explains the whole thing. And dead letter drops. You know what a dead letter drop is, right?
I don't.
Okay, you don't. So a dead letter drop is a loose brick in the wall down the street where you put a secret message and you put the brick back, and then at the front of the alleyway you put a potted plant near the corner. So the potted plant is a signal. There is a message. And then the person that you're trying to deliver that message to goes down the alley. They know which brick is loose. They loosen that brick, take the message out, put the brick back. That's an example of a dead letter box. Classic James Bond spycraft. A good movie is James Le Carre's Smiley's People. Anyways, so those are all in that book, Mastering the Secret Art. And again, learn from your enemy. How do you think the communists managed to take over the whole goddamn world? By using these techniques. That's what they did. All these subversive cells that they established. Oh, we're going to penetrate the schools, and we're going to overthrow the financial system, and they all communicate and they work.
So is that how they've overtaken the church?
Exactly. They've overtaken everything, and this is how they do it. So read the book, Mastering the Secret Art. I didn't write it. I just republished it. It's part of my collection in the Survival Library, all right? and start and also my book, The 36 Strategies. Man, if you want to learn cunning and ruthless tactics, read that book. This will make you street smart. So those books are part of the collection, plus over 320, and I'm in the process of adding another 50 books to the collection. So we got like 400 books in there, including all my books, and it's less than $50. You know, it keeps me going, folks. To be honest with you, that's one of the few sources of income I have left because I've been shadow banned. Unbelievable. You know, my subscriber amount on YouTube has been 17,936 for 4 years.
Yeah.
Every time I look, oh, you had another 56 subscribers. Really? Then how come it hasn't gone up on my subscriber list, right? Yeah, so I've been really, and Eric too. Listen, folks, those of us who are still stupid enough to try and speak the truth once in a while, we are targeted, and we are hit hard financially. So if you can buy my survival library, look, you're doing yourself a favor. My God, you need this information. You need it handy, and you'll be helping me.
Yeah. Good stuff. Well, hey, we always appreciate when you can stop by. Folks, this is going to do a solo show next. Awful lot to get through. And then we've got Karen Morris going to be joining us for another prepper show. Until next time, my good friends, stay safe. God bless.